Not that easy. Thank you everybody for being here. And let's start off. Susan, how about doing the pledge for us? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Susan. I want to say this from my heart, since both my parents are immigrants, it's always great to have an immigrant do the pledge. Thank you. Songsters, Stone.
And me, yeah. All right. Here's one. Here's another. Here we go. So we're missing Tim and Michael this week. Tim's up in Oregon and Michael is in Costa Rica. So I picked a song that had to do with land, since we're talking about Livermore Valley wine growers.
Are you hearing me? Oh, sorry. Okay.
I picked this song this week because we're talking about land, the Livermore Valley wine growers, and it's this land. There aren't going to be any words up there, but I think most people know at least the chorus, right? If you don't know the verses, so sing along. Okay, let's see here. Where am I going to go? It's like that. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream water, this land was made for you and me. As I was walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that golden skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream water. This land was made for you and me. I've roamed and rambled and followed my footsteps to the sparkling sands of the diamond deserts, and all around me a voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me.
You did good.
Okay. Yeah, some good harmony.
Thank you very much. Great job. Okay, Susan, you have your thought?
That was a nice little introduction that Splend gave, because as it happens, what I'm going to be talking about is sort of, in a way, citizenship. Because, well, first of all, I was provoked to write this by July 4th, and also the fact that in 1970, Brian and I became citizens in Philadelphia. And the ceremony was led by Judge Leon Higginbotham, who was the first black man to fill the position of district judge in that area. So anyway, that makes me feel patriotic. But when we came to Livermore in 1972, I was hired by the then president of Livermore's branch of Chabot College to teach history, to teach US history. Are you sure? I asked. In Philadelphia, I taught ancient history, African history, geography, European history, none of them anything to do with US history. Of course, he said, you'll give it a different angle. And so I probably did. I didn't mean to teach it subversively, but my exposure to American history had been very different from that of most of my students. In fact, until the last 10 years in Philadelphia, it had been almost nil. And my students, a huge class, ranged all the way from brilliant and interested to bored and let's get this over. We had a good textbook by the standards of 1974, so I tried to fill in what I saw as gaps. They'd never studied the Western movement, for instance. How could one understand American history without it? Luckily, I'd immersed myself in letters and journals, accounts by pioneers, and even a letter from someone on Morgan Territory Road whose great-grandmother had come on a wagon. Sorry. Anyway, we then discussed how all this fit in with the political history, mostly, that they had studied. The point is I'm trying to make is that there are many ways in which to teach and study history, which has become a rather controversial subject in some parts of the country. In every country, in most schools, history is arranged primarily to help students understand the workings of their government and become good citizens. And that's fine, until any sort of totalitarian government takes over. But in even the best of countries, the school histories of one may differ a long way from those of the other. We grew up in Britain and lived in Canada before we came here. I was somewhat surprised to learn that the War of 1812 was won by Canada. Did you know that? I had to adapt a bit when we came to the USA. When we grew up, there was virtually no US history taught in British schools. We knew Americans, those great guys who used to hurtle around in huge trucks during the war, throwing us candy. But that was about all we knew. The revolution, if we'd heard of it, it was just a mistake, which it was in the case of the British. The British knew how to handle local insurrections. They had them all the time. They just put them down forcefully, calmed things down a bit, and then remedied some of the grievances, which actually led to progress. But this was different. Things have changed. American history is taught all across Europe and Britain now. I like to think that Britain might be portrayed in American textbooks as a beneficial influence rather than a tyranny. After all, there's the idea of no taxation without representation, which goes all the way back to the Middle Ages. There's the common law and the British Bill of Rights, almost identical to the American one, but 100 years earlier. And as we discovered in Philadelphia, some places are still very British. Is that a subversive thought, I wonder? So that's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan. All right, let's acknowledge the people that make this meeting's work. Our sport reporter is Pat Coyle, who I see is on Zoom. Our sport publisher is Don Wentz. I saw Don here, yep. Of course, our photographer, Irv Stowers, thank you, Irv. Audio visual, Paul McCandless, thank you, Paul. And our Zoom host chat monitor, which I'm looking for, is Carolyn Siegfried. But I guess I can't see her on I can't manipulate this, right, on the screen? Oh, I am, but it's not showing up.
I'm here.
Thank you, Carolyn. Okay, thank you. Introduction of visiting Rotarians and guests. Hey. Are there any visiting Rotarians? All right, let's go to guests. Thank you, Steve.
Well, everybody, this is our last opportunity to welcome Ronnie here as a guest, because he's soon going to be a Red Badger like me, and we got to get him indoctrinated in all these things. So next Wednesday morning, he's going to be at the breakfast learning about all the Rotary Club stuff, maybe with some other new members as well. So, but I wanted to say it's our last opportunity with my good friend and brother in eternity, Ronnie Forbes, here as a visitor, because he's going to be a real Rotarian real soon.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve. Ronnie, thank you for coming. Okay, so.
Glenn, we do have one guest on Zoom.
Oh, thank you, please.
All right. My friend John Houghton has joined us today on Zoom. He pretends he's waving, his camera's off. Welcome, John. There he is. Welcome, John.
Welcome, Don. All right, great. As I was saying, so last week I tried a catchphrase that this would be the best damn 90 minutes of your week. However, when I saw all your reports of our visioning process, there was a little comment by one of our Rotarians that maybe it wasn't the best 90 minutes for him. So that person is Mark. And if Mark can do better, I'm going to ask him, and we're going to do my applause, that he come up with a better catchphrase for us. No? Okay, great. Thank you, Mark. Okay. What about this one? I only have really one big announcement to make, and then we're going to bring Gordon up. And that is, we lost the Shrine. All of us as a community have lost the Shriners Hall. It's closing, I guess. I don't know the details. Don, if you want to ask him. So the crowd feed is not going to be at the Shriners Hall. But as Don is, it looks like it's going to be here. So Don and Bob did a great job rallying. It's going to be the same date, March 3rd. But yes, unfortunately, less people, unless we use those side rooms, which we haven't, we can't, okay.
Explained?
Yes, go ahead, Don.
Explained?
Go ahead, Don.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to tell folks that it looks like the Shriners are actually selling that facility to a church. They're going to make it a church. They're remodeling to be a church. Debbie found that out from a friend that goes there. So we have lost it permanently.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Next slide, Paul. Or do you want me to bring up Gordon? Gordon, come on up.
It's funny, as a segue to what Susan said, how history in different countries interpret the same famous people. But I once met the mayor of Madrid at the British Embassy, and so we had a famous mayor in my hometown, Sir Francis Drake, and he said, El Draco, an out-and-out pirate, not a hero. So it's amazing how histories interpret events differently. So, another segue into history. Herb Stowers has very kindly going to act as our historian from now on. So thank you, Herb. He was one of the few Rotarians could remember back a few years. And for those of you who've been to the shack, hands up those who've been to the shack at the behind the singing winemaker on Tesla Road there. Oh, some people, well, it's currently occupied by raccoons and rats, I believe. So we have a vision for Irv. This will be the new, well, Irv hasn't actually seen this either. This is the new Rotary Library. At Herb's expense as well. It's actually from, apologies again, Susan and Brian, this is from Oxford University, they're ex-Cambridge, so this will be the new library. So if anybody has old materials that they can refer to, please do so. Second announcement is that we try to simplify things for volunteering. As you know, these weekly events take a lot of effort, and we're appreciative to everybody who contributes, but we've now got one spreadsheet. This is under the livermore-rotary.org, go under members area, and there you'll see all the different features of what it takes to run our meetings, and we do need volunteers, especially for spill reporting. Kathy and Dora made it a lot more automated, a lot simpler now, but please volunteer. This is under the Google Docs that will be referenced on the website. Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Gordon. A couple of weeks ago,
Yeah, Don?
You might tell everybody in the audience what the password is to get into this members area. Some people might not know.
Okay. All right, I don't, mine's stored in a password manager, so I'll have to look it up. If anybody else going to contact me direct. Sorry, mine's stored in a password manager, so I don't have to remember them, but
It's RLC 94551.
Dawn, you're not supposed to do that.
no, one-on-one, I'll do it. For those that can't reference it from a security point of view. Please call me directly.
so I don't, I was at Trinity College in Dublin a couple of weeks ago, and that library, it's called the Long Library, I think. Yeah, so hopefully that's what Irv's going to end up with, right? Right, okay. Okay, first, before Debbie, while you're walking up, hey, Marianne, tell us about some wonderful things going on in your family.
In my family.
Stand up, please.
Okay.
There's got to be some good stuff.
Well,
At the very least, talk about your husband.
okay. Well, I have some medical grandkids. One is a emergency room nurse in Virginia City, Virginia. And I have her sister is a fourth-year medical student. And down in, I can't even remember where she's at, but she's in Southern California. And she's also in the Air Force. When she comes out, she will be a colonel, I think. And she does have to give service, I think, 4 years after she finishes her medical degree. But she doesn't have to pay a cent to go through medical school. That includes her board, her apartment, everything. So she loves it, and she thinks she's going to go into emergency room service too as a doctor. So that's where she's headed.
All right. So Marianne, as the chair of the local foundation, we hope that you make your first gift on behalf of your grandkids.
I will, and actually, I was thinking about doing it, so should I just do it right now?
Okay, do it.
$1,000.
Excellent. All right, Debbie Peck, birthdays and anniversaries.
Okay, we got a few birthdays and anniversaries, so if I call your name, could you just raise your hand so Sonia can find you? So Sonia can find you, is that better? Okay, good. So, birthdays, Wendy Ellison, July 6th. James Hannon, July 9th. Bill Groth, July 11th. Jay Davis, nobody's here. He was the 12th of July. Peter Paulson, 13 July. Bob Cowan, 27th of July. And John Marion, the 31st of July. So we only have one here. So we're going to sing happy birthday.
So it's a personal happy birthday.
It's personal to you, Bob. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Rotarian Bob. Happy birthday to you. Okay, I know we have a couple of anniversary people here. 24 years, Steve and Karen Powell. So welcome back, Steve. 32 years, Jackie Williams Courtwright. She's not here. Trish Monroe, 42 years.
I'm here.
Pat McMiniman. Pat McMiniman, 46 years. And we've got Don Wentz here. Don Wentz and Sherry have been married 51 years. Carol, Howell, and Rich have been married 56 years. And Randy and Brenda Schlintz, 61 years. Congratulations. And happy anniversary. We don't have a song, so happy anniversary.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Stu. All right. Hey, Mary Alice, you enjoyed, are you retired? Really? You still at the bank?
No, I am retired. Oh, good heavens.
Tell us what you're up to.
Yeah, no, I am gone from the bank, but I'm still at LARPD, so.
Is that a full-time gig?
Yes.
Tell us more about what you do. Tell us
You
more
have
what
to
you're
get
doing.
reelected though, so, you know.
Oh, you want to make this into a political thing?
Well, I'm living now at Heritage Estates. I had a stroke 2 years ago, and I'm partially blind now, so it really puts a crimp in what I can do. But fortunately, I have really good friends like Beth Wilson, who comes and hauls me around and brings me to Rotary meetings, so I'm very happy to be here.
Well, you should thank Beth.
Oh, where did they go? She's right behind you.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay. I had a little request. Would you
Yes,
mind,
Sheila.
President Splend? I am looking for a fellow Rotarian to help me with a little practical joke. If you would be interested in helping me with something like that, if you could please see me after the meeting or email me, okay? Thank you.
All right, let me see if I can do this. Carol Bowers, can you unmute yourself? Well, Carol has something that we have, if we haven't already read, she's retiring, right?
Hello, I'm here again.
So, I guess she just can't, that's what I was asking Mary Alice about retirement. She can't say retired. Carol, you want to tell us about your new gig?
Okay, so I'm going to be the CEO and president of the Three Valleys Community Foundation. So I have about a week retirement in between, and then I'm going to have a new challenge. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm really excited to continue to do good things for the community. And I'm hoping that all will go well.
So the rumor is that your family insisted you get another job. They really didn't want you around.
Well, I will tell you, my husband and I both are known for working a lot. Even when we were married, we both went to work that morning. We got married in Pleasanton at the courthouse, and we both went back to work that night. So, so we're very driven to accomplish things. But no, I think my husband wants me around, but not to the excess. I got to stay busy, have a lot of energy.
All right, Kelly, and I hope that means that you'll be contributing something to your favorite charity, which I hope is us.
Well, and I am going to be, I think, a position now to help with Rotary, right?
Yes, you are. You're going to be the public image director for our club. Yes, thank you very much, Kelly.
Thanks, Glenn.
All right. Okay, I can't tell, but is Lori on? Okay, we could get going. Tell me when she's up.
I'm right here, Splend. Can you see me?
Yes, well, it's kind of hard for me because on here, but let me introduce you, Lori Souza. And I know many of you know Lori from, when she worked at the lab and the like, but Lori has been incredibly active. I mean, she used to be a member of our club. She is now a member of the morning club. And, but she's just taken on so many great volunteer jobs. And the latest one, she's the chair of the Tri-Valley Conservancy. And Lori took that over, and she's going to be president, I think, 2 years, 2-year gig. And she,
1 year, thank you.
it's 2 years. The board got together, decided it was 2 years. And so she's done a wonderful job managing. If you may have heard, we had a longtime executive director and we lost her, she retired. And then we hired somebody, and that person unfortunately did not last very long. So going through the search, Lori stepped in and ran the Tri-Valley Conservancy for a good, I want to say 5 months or so, maybe a little bit longer.
Just 3.
That was 5, felt like 5.
It felt like 5.
So we asked Lori if she could come. The TVC has a study that they commissioned through UC Davis on the economics of the current economics of our wine country. So Lori, can you let us inform us about UC Davis and the study, and also Tri-Valley Conservancy?
Will do. Thank you, Splend. Thank you for the introduction. And so good to hear everybody and see folks. So let's see, do you want me to share my screen? Because I just saw you guys flash it up. So if you want to.
So if you would share your screen, we would appreciate that. If you can share your screen.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to blow this up. And can you all see that? I didn't hear a response, so I'm assuming.
Yes, we can see that.
All right, thank you. So I'm really pleased to be here today. Thank you for the invitation. As Splend talked about, the Tri-Valley Conservancy commissioned a study from the UC Davis, and I'd like to go over it with you today. I think the results are actually very impactful, and I'll talk a little bit about how we have reached out to our community leaders and government leaders and how they're embracing it. So a little bit of background. We did commission this research back in 2020 of January. Of course, that was right before COVID. And the purpose was to create an impartial assessment of the economic viability of our Livermore Valley wine region. Some of this research we could have actually done ourselves, but we really wanted a world-renowned research organization to pull it together, and we needed it to be impartial. And basically, we were looking for the researchers to look at the past, the present, and the future of our wine region. And we wanted to identify measurable and achievable goals to support the South Livermore Valley Area Plan. And then finally, we wanted to build broad public understanding of what our strategies are at the TVC and their relationship to a successful implementation of the South Livermore Valley Area Plan. So just a reminder for those of you who might not be familiar with what we do, we are a land trust. We're an agricultural land trust, and it's our job to protect, preserve, and promote the South Livermore Valley Area Plan. It is an agricultural preserve, and it is part of makes a huge contribution to our quality of life here. One of the goals of the South Livermore Valley Area Plan was to achieve a critical mass of 5,000 vineyard acres and to help the region be recognized as a premier wine growing region. We have a very rich history here, going back over 100 years of growing wine grapes here. We've been recognized around the world for being a location for premier wine growing. And we need to kind of return to enough acreage in order to sustain that reputation, if you will. Currently, we have about 2,800 acres of planted vineyards, and 1,600 of those are what we call mitigation acreage. So those are vines that were planted close to 30 years ago in exchange for housing development that went into various areas around the South Livermore Valley. Some of it was the Ruby Hill development in Pleasanton. Some of it was the South Livermore housing developments that went in. And so this was all part of a plan for balanced growth trying to balance housing that was needed because there was a lot of pressure to urbanize the very precious acreage that we have. At the same time, we wanted to preserve it as an agricultural area. And as an organization, we're committed to the successful implementation of this area plan, and we're taking critical steps to increase the economic feasibility of this region. So specifically, this research report is called Realizing the Heritage. It's grape growing and winemaking in the Livermore Valley. The authors were Dr. James Lapsley. He's an academic researcher at the University of California at Davis, and he's in the California Agricultural Issues Lab. And Daniel Sumner, he is the Frank H. Buck Distinguished Professor in the Department of Agriculture and Resource Economics. And he's also a member of the Giannini Foundation. And they were asked to prepare a report to provide actionable information for public and private decision makers in the Livermore Valley wine region. So some highlights from the study. What they found is that the Livermore Valley AVA, the American Viticulture Area, has the right combination of soil, climate, water, and expertise to grow world-class wine grapes. So we have everything that's needed here. The South Livermore Valley has about 7,000 acres that are suitable for commercial agriculture. And today there is about 48 active wineries in the Livermore Valley AVA, and we serve a market of approximately 6 million people that are within a 1-hour drive. So think about the kinds of folks that could come here from Silicon Valley, the East Bay, even San Joaquin. So with all that working in our favor, why haven't we achieved 5,000 acres of cultivated viticulture? So some of the key findings is that for us in the Livermore AVA, we don't have the reputation to distinguish us from other grapes grown in the coastal region. So we are actually part of a larger AVA called the Central Coast. So these are like concentric circles. So the Livermore AVA is kind of inside the Central Coast AVA, and within that is the San Francisco AVA. So these are kind of like concentric circles. We, as I mentioned, we have about 2,800 acres, and that's only about 2.3% of the production that's grown in California wine grapes. Our grapes come from about 125 different vineyards, of which 104 are less than 20 acres. This is a very important point. If you think about the economies of scale that are needed to be economically viable to harvest and manage this acreage. About half of our wineries produce less than 2,000 cases a year. That is considered a very small wine production. I would consider that micro, okay? 2 of our wineries are quite large. Both Winty and Kincannon produce over half of all of the Livermore wine, and they also have national distribution networks. That too is very important to the economy of this industry. So the region lacks the infrastructure to support agritourism, and what most farm operations are experiencing in the state of California as well as across the nation today is that in order to be economically viable, oftentimes they have to include something called agritourism. So wine tasting is actually considered agritourism. So when you bring folks into the operation, if you will, to experience the farming or the results of the farming, that is considered agritourism. Many of Livermore's independent vineyards were not profitable in 2019 and 2020, and we have not gone back and pulled more recent data in 21 and 22. And about 2/3 of our current vines are scheduled to be removed by 2030 unless action is taken. And the reason for that is they're coming to the end of their productive life. So most vineyards last about 25 to 30 years, and then the yields really start to drop off. So we asked the professors to also do a couple of benchmark studies for us because we wanted to understand what was successful in other wine regions. We looked at the Santa Lucia Highlands because it has similar acreage to the Livermore AVA, and they've been successful because they focused on a single varietal. It's the Pinot Noir grape, and at the time it was an emerging varietal, but they've been able to establish themselves with a significant price premium over the same varietal being harvested in Monterey. And so this was kind of the crux, if you will, of their successful business model. They have major wineries with national distribution networks, and they paid a close attention to profitability. They focused on vineyard layout and specific clonal selections and precision farming that were suited to their region. And for them, the median sized vineyards are about 50 acres. Again, when you think about the economy of scale that's needed to care for and harvest grapes, acreage matters. And just a reminder, about 80% of our vineyards are less than 20 acres. And that was by design when we did the expansion, and it came about because of the mitigation acres that were planted in exchange for allowing housing to go in. Another region we looked at was Temecula. Some of you might be familiar with this. It's a little bit north of San Diego. It is similar to Livermore in that it has a large number of small wineries. And years ago, they planted their grapes instead of citrus since it took less water. And individual property owners there have no water rights. The water all comes from the state water project. Temecula has a very favorable zoning with their county, so it's very favorable to the wine industry. And they have made investments in restaurants and event centers and bed and breakfast. And so they've really made it an agritourism area. I can't tell you what it's like since COVID, but before COVID, if you spent time in Temecula on any weekend, you would see busload after busload of visitors coming in from the Los Angeles area to spend the weekend in Temecula and to partake in the beautiful wines that they're making there. And that particular region has grown without wine industry capital investment, which means that the individual wineries made their own investment to grow and expand. So what do we need to do to revitalize the Livermore Valley wine country? So specifically, we need to provide the economic justification to replant these 1,600 plus mitigation acres in order to sustain the current acreage we have. You know, we're trying to get to 5,000 acres. We certainly don't want to go backwards by seeing 1,600 acres pulled out and not replanted. And to achieve that 5,000 acres of critical mass, we need to attract investment in our prime farmland. And we think it needs to come from outside the valley because we've saturated, if you will, all the investors here locally. So the recommendations from the study to promote the economics of a sustainable vineyard industry is to enhance the wine tourism. We need to add agriculturally related, visitor attracting, retail, as it was laid out in the vision for the South Livermore Valley Area Plan. That includes a resort, hotel, and spa. This is different than the hotel downtown. So we do need that downtown hotel. It is very much an important piece of this whole puzzle. But in addition to that, we need a resort, hotel, spa that is actually out in wine country. We need perhaps more bed and breakfast establishments and more tasting rooms. We also need to improve the consistency of the quality of our local wine. So because some of the producers are very small, it's very hard for them to manage quality and consistency from year over year. And so we are doing some things to help the smaller producers address that issue. We think we need to focus on one or two signature varietals. The Livermore Valley AVA is known for its Sauvignon Blanc. That goes back over 100 years. So we think that is certainly a varietal which we should be paying attention to. And we're also really excited about Cab Franc. And so as these vineyards get pulled out, we're going to be talking to the farmers. We've already started talking to the farmers about making an investment in just a couple of varietals, either Cab Franc or Sauvignon Blanc. We do need to attract a couple of mid-sized wineries in our region because that would then demand more grape production. So the way you get more acreage under vine is you get more people to buy your grapes. Okay, so this is a very important piece of the puzzle. And then we still need some clarification on land use provisions. We're working very closely with the county now. We have a bunch of amendments going in, and that will help the farmers and the winemakers just make better use of the land that's available for production. So what are we doing at the Tri-Valley Conservancy? Because infrastructure is so important to this, answering these critical need, we've been working closely with the city of Livermore to draft an initiative for the voters in November. This just went to the city council on Monday night. and they approved the staff's recommendation to support their sponsorship. So the city of Livermore will be sponsoring an initiative on November's ballot. And basically what it does is it asks the Livermore voters to vote in favor of extending the sewer services out into the South Livermore Valley. And this is critically important because today, one of the biggest challenges for our wine producers is what do they do with their waste streams? And you're not in the county, you're not allowed to put in septic systems anymore because they've learned over the years that it's just overpowering the groundwater. And so this sewer line extension is critically important to attract those mid-sized wineries that we need to make this economic puzzle come together. I hope you'll join me in helping to promote this initiative. We have a campaign that we're launching just to get the facts out for the voters. The voters of Livermore will not pay for the construction of this sewer line. It is going to be funded by Alameda County. We already have the funds set aside. And then the gap in the funding will be covered by state and federal funds. We've also partnered with the Livermore Valley Wine Growers Association, and we've established something called a Wine Quality Alliance. So this is going to address the quality issues, that consistency that I talked about. We want to focus on improving, again, the quality and consistency from our local producers, and we've hired a winemaking consultant and made her available to our winemakers. And she's been holding seminars and going out and meeting with them. And we're building a huge database. We're analyzing all the wines to understand also the underlying chemistry, which contributes significantly to the taste of the wine, as well as technique and methodology in the actual winemaking and bottling processes. So we've made that available to our winemakers. I talked a little bit about the amendments that are going into the South Livermore Valley Area Plan. Those have been submitted to the county. Those will be going to the Board of Supervisors, I believe, this month. And again, nothing significant there except to clarify some language. And this is important for the county planners because when the language doesn't line up with what was intended by the architects of the South Livermore Valley Area Plan, the actual farmers and the winemakers are the ones who get caught in the middle and get strung out with all these very expensive delays. And then also we've requested a study to look at the efficacy of the South Livermore Valley Area Plan. It is over 25 years old, and LAFCO is just completed a study looking at the effectiveness of Measure D. That's the urban growth boundary language that protects our East County from urbanization. And at the same time, LAFCO has agreed to take a look at the specifics of the South Livermore Valley Area Plan and to help us understand what's worked and what hasn't over the last close to 30 years. So that concludes my prepared remarks, and I am happy to take any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lori. Let me see. Carolyn, is there anyone on Zoom who has their hand raised or any questions?
I do not see any hands raised at this point or questions in the chat. So you can take them from the room first, and then to remind those on Zoom, use the hand raise function, and I'll call on you. I guess Kathy Quayle, I take that back. Kathy Quayle has raised her hand.
Acknowledge.
Yeah, I had put that in the chat, Carolyn, but it's okay. So Lori, when you talk about the extension of the sewer, is that going to require a change in the existing sewer pipeline that we have?
They'll extend the pipe. Technically, that's what the extension is. So they'll install the pipe. Right now, the preferred route is to go south on Buena Vista and then east on Tesla and then south on Greenville. That will pick up a lot of the acreage that we need to have the service for. And they've already looked at the capacity of the water treatment facility, and it has capacity to, we've already measured, how much effluent we think this will produce. And we've done all the calculations on the water treatment facility, and it can handle the additional flow. Picking up Buena Vista is actually very important because there's a lot of homes, residents there. Those are part of Alameda County unincorporated. That's not part of Livermore. But those folks are on septic. Many of those septics are aging. And it would be really nice for them to tap into wastewater facilities rather than have to reinstall a new septic system, which we know does have it's threats to our groundwater. And we all share the same groundwater.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Carolyn, Carolyn, are there any other questions in the chat?
I do not see any other questions in the chat. Sorry, I missed Kathy's there. So they'll probably come up as other questions come from the room.
Right,
Splend, if I may, I just wanted to add that, I know the report is somewhat sobering, and I mean no pun intended on that. But we're very optimistic. So getting this report was enormously powerful. We have briefed many of the governance bodies, the Board of Supervisors, Agricultural Advisory Committee, Transportation and Planning, City of Livermore, City of Pleasanton, and the leaders consider it a kind of a wake-up call. We don't have to see the vines pulled out and not replanted. The farmers are actually inclined to replant if we can, offer some kind of economic viability for them. So for planting vineyards is super expensive, and it's a very heavily capital intensive, and you amortize the cost over 30 years. And so basically when they're deciding right now whether they're going to replant grapes, they're trying to figure out they're trying to forecast what's going to happen over the next 30 years. So if we're willing to make these investments in infrastructure and agritourism, and we can demonstrate that there are parties interested in coming out and buying more Livermore product, they are going to replant. So I don't want to leave you with the impression that it's all doom and gloom. We're actually fairly optimistic. We have very specific tasks that we're undertaking that I think will remedy a lot of the concerns that we have.
All right, so Splend, I did have one question that I should have asked earlier, and that's Lori. Tricia had said in the comments before she had to leave the meeting that she had an opportunity to read the report. So for those who are interested, where can they access the full report?
Yeah, you can get that on our website. And if you would like we have actually a really nice color copy. If you're interested in that and you can get me the information, we can get you those. We can bring them to one of your meetings or.
All right, and then I do see we have a question. Hank, if you have one question, and then we'll go to the people in the room. Hank.
Lori, how severe to the Livermore Valley water table would it be if that new sewer line were not extended?
So Hank, I missed the very first part of your question. How
severe would the threat to our water supply be, our groundwater, if the sewer line is not extended to those people who presently have decaying sewer tanks or septic tanks?
So I can't really speak to the septic users on Buena Vista because I actually don't know that. We do know that there's a plume that has moved from the Buena Vista area towards Concannon, and it actually created quite a problem for them in the recent past. And Concannon was getting fined every day for contaminants in the groundwater. And it turned out they weren't even the culprit, but they ended up, they were allowed to connect to the city sewer because their land is contingent to the city. So they solved that problem. Our winemakers today, the smaller producers actually have to, at great expense, they have to haul their wastewater out. So when they're in the production of making the wine and they're producing these waste streams, they're actually hauling the water out. But you can't attract a medium-sized winery with that kind of business model. So if the sewer line is there, then we could attract the medium-sized wineries, which is what we think we need for this puzzle. We've got really small producers and we've got a couple of very large producers, and we need this medium sized wineries to come in and fill the gap. And so without that sewer line, they're not going to come in here. So you could say, well, that's yeah, you could say, well, that's okay.
It would be a threat to the community if the line isn't extended.
I'm sorry, what was that?
If the line is not extended, independent of the wine growers, okay, independent of them, If that line is not extended and we're getting our groundwater polluted, then something has to be done.
Right. So what we're trying to do is provide the infrastructure so that you do not continue with the threat of contamination in the groundwater.
Right.
All right, so we'll, Splend, go back to questions from the room.
Thank you, Carolyn. Bob Cowan.
Okay, excellent presentation, Lori. And
thank you.
The sound system in here is a little substandard, and you made a point about the grapes that really, I'm not turned on. Okay, the grapes that are really should do well here in the valley, and I did not understand through our sound system what those were. Could you repeat those?
Yes, thank you so much. So there's two varietals that we're really excited about. One is Sauvignon Blanc. We actually already grow a lot of Sauvignon Blanc here, and the valley is famous for its Sauv Blanc. If you can go back over 100 years ago, and we won medals for our Sauv Blanc wine at international competitions. And even today, Livermore Valley's AVA is known for its Sauvignon Blanc. In addition to that, we're excited about Cab Franc. So we actually have a lot of vineyard today that's planted in Cabernet Sauvignon. Beautiful varietal, beautiful grape. What's happening with climate change is that the grapes are having to hang on the vine much longer than what we're used to because of the change in the climate. So our climate has actually grown a little bit cooler over the last 40 years. I know you're going to go, what? I thought climate change was global warming. Not necessarily. And so our Cabernet Sauvignon is hanging on the vine a little bit longer. So now the harvests are moving out all the way into November sometimes. And you can't get peak performance from the grapes when they're coming in that late because you don't get as much sunshine on the grapes. Cab Franc actually matures sooner than Cabernet Sauvignon. So we actually think it's well suited for our quote new climate, if that makes sense. And Splend is a wine grower. He could probably tell you a lot more about this than me.
Okay, thank you, Lord. So let me tell you a little story about the Sauvignon Blanc, and I'll go to Carol and then Steve, or Steve and then Carol. Steve first, okay. So the cuttings she refers to were brought here by Louis Mel. Do you know who Louis Mel is? So have you been to Murrieta as well? He built it. And it was upgraded by the Wente family 25 years ago. Louis Mel brought cuttings from Chateau Yquem, and that was Sauvignon Blanc. And if you want to know where the cuttings are, they still exist. There's a vineyard. I know where they are on the Wente vineyards. I'd have to open the gate, but I can do that. And I'll show you where they're near my house, actually. So and that won a gold medal at the Paris Exposition in 1898, I think.
I think that's right, Splend, yeah.
It was from that wine from here that won that competition. All right, Steve.
So as one of those folks who has been tied up for 15 years by bureaucratic county stuff, I really am interested in the language changes because I'm very intimately familiar with the approval opportunities with agricultural wineries and things. Can you share the text of the request that you're making in the code?
Of course. It's actually in the public record, Steve. It's in the public record because it's gone to the county supervisors, and I'm happy to share with you. It's actually quite lengthy. A lot of it are just technical changes to the language, redefining agricultural buildings, some language correction to clustering. And I know this is going to be over. Most people don't want to hear about all this stuff, but I'm happy to talk to you about it offline. And it's all in the public record. So if you go to the LAFCO report on Measure D, they've actually put our recommended amendments, they've attached it to the back of their report because it's got those two things are going in together.
Okay, Carol.
Lori, I was told when I moved to Livermore that they were known for Petite Syrah grapes. So I have been very carefully often drinking Petite Syrah. But that's not one of our varietals, apparently, or future varietals. Is that because it's not a popular wine right now, or is it because I got some poor information?
No, you got great information, Carol. And thank you for being a consumer. I'm a consumer too. So actually, Concannon was the first winery to, at least in this region, to make Petite Syrah into a varietal and bottle it as a varietal all of its own. And it's a beautiful grape. And we're not talking about pulling out all the Cabernet Sauvignon or all the Petite Syrah or all the Syrah. We actually grow Merlot here. We grow all kinds of varietals. What we're saying is that we want to talk with the farmers who are considering replanting. And when they're thinking about which varietal should I invest in now, we think Cab Franc is a really good varietal for the future for all the reasons that I cited. It's well suited to our soil and our climate. And we also believe it's a beautiful varietal. It makes beautiful wines. And so we think economically there's an opportunity for us to be known as the Cab Franc region, just like Santa Lucia has become the region for Pinot Noir. So that's all that's about, but you're still going to get beautiful Petite Syrahs from this region, and I hope you can continue to enjoy them as long as I do.
All right, thank you.
I'm curious, the extension of the sewer line that you were talking about, where is the opposition coming from for that?
Well, thank you for that question. So far, there hasn't been much opposition. I'm going to knock on wood. We've heard from a couple of individuals who are concerned about increased use of pesticide, so that if in fact we were successful and got 5,000 acres under vine, it would increase the use of farming methods, including pesticides and herbicides that they use in the farming. I can only respond to that by saying that our farmers have all subscribed to sustainable farming methods. And one of the things that came out in one of the oppositions was that, you know, the farmers are hiding the kind of pesticides they use and all that. That is not true at all. The pesticide use is a very heavily regulated part of our industry. Everything gets recorded with the state of California and the county. And so there's no hiding going on, but definitely there is pesticide use going on. But at the same time, it is a part of the farming operation, and they're using very sustainable methods, which means they're using products that have the least amount of negative impact, if you will, on the environment.
All right, next, hold on, Loretta. So when Lori says Cab, I know she said Cab Sauvignon and Cab Franc, but in the industry, if you say Cab, everyone knows it's Cabernet Sauvignon. That's because that's the #1 grown grape in California, right? Closely with Chardonnay.
And Napa's famous for us, right? So let's gonna have Napa have Cab Sauv, and we're gonna have Cab Franc.
Yeah, thank you so much for this presentation. I'm excited to hear about the route of the sewer. What I think I heard you say was it was going down Buena Vista, and then it will turn onto Tesla. Having said that, then there's an opportunity for the city to annex the folks on Buena Vista if they choose to. And if they are indeed going to do, if the county is going to indeed do the Tesla widening, the Tesla road widening project, perhaps it can be piggybacked as far as laying lines. It would be nice to see some efficiencies. So do you know anything about that?
Yes, just a little bit. So I don't know about the annexation. Actually, the expert on that is Glenn Splendorio, and I think you guys all know him. But as far as trying to get the projects coordinated, because there are some other efforts going on with the county, they want to underground the utility lines on Tesla Road. You're absolutely right. There's going to be a lot of effort made to try to coordinate those two projects, so there's only a disruption one time. So thank you for that.
Okay. Loretta, if you want to know about annexation, just call me. I'll talk to you. Trex.
Yeah, hi, Trex Donovan. Yeah, I kind of, along the same lines, I was wondering, because used to be a resident on Buena Vista, and I know they tried to annex it into the city a long time ago, and most of the residents there didn't want to pay the extra money to attach to a sewer if a sewer came in. I was wondering about what that was going to do to the zoning and the country feel of Buena Vista, because then it will change zoning, and then they'll be able to kind of make it more like the rest of the city. And then what about Marina, which is also on septic systems and fairly congested septic systems.
Yeah, so I can only speak to the route that the preferred route for this particular project. I don't know about Marina. I mean, I'm familiar with the residents, but I don't know what any plans are for sewer hookup there. I think, so the way it'll work with the folks on Buena Vista is they will have an opportunity to hook up to the sewer line should they choose to. They will not be forced to do so. The sewer line will be running right, in front of them. For those who are faced with replacing their septic systems, my understanding is that the cost is close to $50,000 to replace their septic. And that the hookup to the new line is an option for them. And there will be a hookup fee, just like all of us had to pay a hookup fee. You might have had your home already built before you moved in, which means your developer paid the hookup fee. But there's always a fee for initial hookup and then for ongoing maintenance and operations. And all of us pay our own portion of our use of the sewer line through our annual property tax, and it's built into that. I see Mark Roberts.
Mark?
All right, a little bit about what happens when a sewer line goes down an area. We're tying together 2 or 3 things that are not related to each other. So the first is infrastructure, which is the sewer line, and the change, if the voters change it, essentially changes the words of the urban growth boundary. The urban growth boundary itself will not move, but certain uses will be allowed to attach to it. The second is land use, okay? Right now, Buena Vista land use is governed by the county. It can't subdivide further under county law, and those laws aren't going to be changing. The third is annexation, and that is done by a request of the folks in the area to annex into the city. Even if they did annex into the city, they'd still be on the far side of the urban growth boundary. So unless we go back and the voters again move the actual boundary, the sort of look and feel of Tesla won't change with this. But what will change is when your septic system actually craters, you'll have an option. We did have some areas that were infill pockets in the cities where people couldn't use their second and third bedrooms because their septic system was such horrible shape, and the county wouldn't, for any price, let them install a new septic system. So essentially this will allow those communities, those houses, and even some businesses along there to continue to survive over the long term. But it doesn't necessarily change the character. That would have to be separate actions done by the voters at a separate time. But appreciate the question.
So if there are no more questions, I'm the chairman of LAFCO. We have a couple of areas of the county where they're in the county and we have to approve, and that would happen in Buena Vista. We would approve those connections. It's not, the city would approve them, but ultimately it's LAFCO's decision to approve those connections. And what we have experienced, and this is parts of the Hayward Hills, and if you're familiar with Happy Valley in Pleasanton, so their septic systems fail and they're not allowed to replace them. They come to us and we will approve it. I can't tell you this, but we approve every one of them because it's a public safety issue. They're polluting the groundwater, and we almost always, well, not always, we always do. So the people in the Hayward Hills, people in Happy Valley, we get about one on our calendar, on every calendar, where a homeowner's septic has failed. They have no choices. They don't have a house anymore because without a way to dispose of your wastewater. So we always approve connections. And I suspect Buena Vista will end up something like that they'll have to connect because they don't have a choice, because right now they are polluting the groundwater there for the most part. Does that help? Mark, does that make sense?
Operational order. The city does not have a program, neither does LAFCO, to force somebody who has an operational septic system to connect.
Right.
It's only when they fail. Septic systems have a life just like everything else. When they're at end of life, that's when that sort of connection to that. It is an out of area service agreement, does have to be approved by LAFCO, does have to be approved by the county, does have to be approved by the city. So it's not super duper simple, but it's way better than not being able to use a business or a home.
Right. Okay, somebody else have a question? We're over time, I apologize. Bob, just a second. Here you go.
What are the environmental hazards in commercial wine production that are so concerning to the dump into the ground?
So, it's just waste streams. I mean, there's just a lot of some water used when you're actually producing the wine itself. And it's just things that you don't want dumped into the groundwater. And so I think given enough time and enough area, you can put this stuff on the ground and let it slowly percolate down, and it's not all that bad, but you can't handle it on septic. So a medium-sized winery would not be interested in coming to this region if they were told they had to build their own waste treatment facility on their property in order to process wine. Because a medium-sized winery is anything from I think 60,000 to over 100,000 cases a year. So it's just it's a volume question.
All right, thank you very much. Lori, thanks for being us. Big hand for Lori. And until Mark comes up with a better saying, I hope this was the best damn 90 minutes of your week.